All right, everyone, it's time for an update on the war situation going on. I hate to tell you this, but Palestine effectively, for all intents and purposes, no longer really exists. It's been bombed so thoroughly at this point. I mean, the Gaza Strip is densely populated. Much of it has been depopulated. You've got over 1 million refugees in Gaza that, in general, would like to flee to Egypt, but that's not a thing. Bombing continues 24/7 and has now for an extended period of time. Effectively, Gaza no longer appears to have the infrastructure necessary to be part of a state. It's more like Libya. Libya doesn't, for example, really exist anymore. I mean, on paper it does. There's an incepted nation called Libya. It has a government, but is that government actually capable of controlling its own territory? No. Is there any real human development there? Not really. That's been ruined. And I guess the worry is now you're going to have several million Gazan refugees entering mainly Europe. Of course, the United States will gladly open the border as well for them. I mean, there is no border at this point under Joe Biden, and that Gaza will be entirely depopulated. There will be no stone left upon another, or something biblical like that, and Christians will roar with approval over such a thing, which is, I think, sad more than anything else. Again, disclaimer for those that aren't already aware, most of you are, but, occasionally YouTube's algorithm allows a new viewer to view my content. I am not Team Palestine or Team Israel. I think that we should stay out of this nonsense. The United States should look after itself. I'm America first. I don't believe in giving limitless money and weapons to third world nations. Or aid in general to other nations until we can get our own fiscal house in order, which we're a far cry off from because of Bidenomics. So saying that up front, nonetheless, it's rather disturbing the number of people who appear to have absolutely no care for what's going on in Gaza based on what Hamas has done. So Hamas is it's kind of a fusion of a state authority and a non-state terroristic actor. It's quite clear that when you paraglide into a neighboring country and take several hundred people hostage and do crazy shit like that and randomly and indiscriminately target anyone that happens to be in proximity, that's not good. It's not the sort of thing that a civilized person does. Unfortunately, we have now an element of collective punishment going on, though, in Palestine that is deeply disturbing. Because what the West is doing is sitting by idly, really not doing or saying anything, simply because of who happened to have been attacked, as Gaza is effectively starved into submission. Most of the people there are not Hamas members. When Herzog came out, this was last week, and said, well, the Gazans bear a collective guilt for what's going on right now because they fucking elected Hamas. Okay, firstly, you're assuming that the election was proper. We've seen some screwy elections even in developed nations over the last few years. Palestine is not a developed nation. Palestine was already run by these dudes anyway because they're the ones with the guns. Another argument for the Second Amendment and having a beefy militia, by the way, at least I believe so. But you're blaming them even though a lot of them never supported that particular political movement. A lot of people supported an adjacent party that does not, by the way, say, kill the Jews or anything like that, that sort of got annexed, sort of got absorbed by Hamas. There were certainly people that were too young to vote, of ill mind, they're not allowed to vote, or people that were intimidated at the polls. Hey, who are you voting for? Oh, I think I'm going to vote for candidate A. Well, that would be a mistake, because we're going to break your knees backwards if you vote for candidate A. Trust me, candidate B is the one that is watching out for your knees. That's basically the way elections work in most of the world, by the way. This is not a unique feature to Palestine. So when I heard that, and I didn't really see any outrage except among fucking commie, pink-haired, leftoid college kids in the Western world, who always bleed about the issue anyway. They, by the way, they think that Israel is far right for some reason. Is it because CNN told you that Netanyahu was a conservative? Yeah, maybe in the sense of wanting war. Other than that, no. You look at the financial policies of Israel. It's a high-tax, fairly regulated state. More on the lines of a mixed model economy, sort of like a mini China or something like that, if you really think about it. And it happens. We have a lot of tourist revenue, niche industries, olive growing and shit like that. You can't help it maybe. Palestine, though, has been bombed so thoroughly at this point that it almost doesn't exist. I mean, even if they were to restore electricity, running water, food supplies and stuff, is there really a Gaza City left? Because a lot of it seems to be a pile of ashes. How are you going to house I don't even really mean to laugh here. It's more like grave humor. It's incredulity. It strains, it boggles the mind. I'm trying to think about how 2.3 million people can possibly dwell in that small area when much of it has been reduced to piles of rubble. Well, then the short answer is they can't. The short answer is that it's impossible. They're unlivable conditions, and the average person would find it so. Israel was provoked by Hamas, as has been the case many times in the past, and Hamas hauled off and slaughtered a shit ton of civilians. It makes sense that Israel's angry, and it makes sense that they're responding. But looking at the broader picture, the lopsidedness of Hamas did A, and now Israel is continuously doing B, the lopsidedness it's definitely there, and Israel has done this before. The real problem, and this is partially just diplomatic strategy, Israel's problem is that when it's fighting a non-state actor that mainly fires short-range, unguided, sometimes warhead-free rockets, and beheads a few people and paraglides in, that's very novel and strange, but I guess that's the Palestinian Air Force for you. It helps if you have an airport, if you're going to have an air force, to be clear. They go in, they kill a bunch of people. Israel's response, though, because it's a state actor, and because it has fundamentally at least a first world military, automatically is going to be lopsided. This becomes a problem for Israel. The longer that this goes on, the more people are going to turn against Israel of necessity because of that response. Hamas is no longer capable of fighting unless Israel physically invades, which it apparently plans to. Again, it's been a while since there was a ground incursion by the IDF of this kind, especially against an enemy that's entrenching minute by minute. Israel normally does the airstrike thing. Targeted strike here, a couple of sorties. It bombs a nuclear station. It bombs a power plant. It bombs, a block that's being used specifically by Hamas to launch rockets off. The response is much, much larger now, and even in much smaller situations, this is what we see. Israel goes in with overwhelming superiority because it actually has an air force, and it bombs an area and kills a bunch of people in retaliation, sometimes for attacks that didn't really cause any death at all. I mean, Hamas rockets are not exactly technologically advanced pieces of equipment. Some of them, again, do not even have a warhead in them. They hit the ground and they kind of sort of explode, and that's basically, if they hit a car, then definitely it'll do damage. If it hits the pavement, it doesn't even crack the pavement. That's not the average Hamas rocket, but they are known to fire Dud missiles. I think part of the reason is to get Israel to fire Iron Dome, which costs a hell of a lot more than an empty rocket does. It's sort of basically an attempt to sap money more than anything else. Now, Palestine. What Palestine? The West Bank basically is open fodder for anyone that wants to settle there and happens to be Jewish. They happen to be Israeli. And Gaza is effectively surrounded. Israel is openly proclaiming they're going to annex a strip of land around it in order to create a security buffer while bombing it into submission. Where's Palestine? You might as well not even fucking have a Palestine. Israel might as well just re-annex these areas and then deport people forcibly or something like that, because it'd be basically already doing that. It's already basically a sub-ethnic cleansing when you really think about it. You can say, and if you're an evangelical Christian, you probably think this, you can say it's justified. Well, Hamas, finally tripped the trigger. That's okay, but don't half-ass it. If anything, Biden and the others in the West shouldn't bother calling for restraint this time. Have it out. Do what you're going to do. It'll be messy and murderous, and people will generally turn against you and condemn your nation. But you've created a solution to the so-called problem. Well, not really, because now the Hamas members are just across another border, but yeah, you've cleared out the Gaza Strip. Congratulations. Now you can spend trillions of dollars redeveloping it. I don't know. At this point, it's just becoming butcherous. And I'm anti-war to begin with, so if Hamas didn't exist, that would be wonderful. If the IDF didn't exist, I guess that'd be wonderful too. But it is a little bit of an apples to oranges comparison when we're looking at the sheer firepower and the amount of damage done at this point. It's becoming lopsided, and this is the tale of how Israel has conducted itself in warfare for decades. The problem is that eventually the CNN viewers get tired of seeing dead people in Gaza because they ain't seeing any dead Jews, because the IDF has taken to the skies and established overwhelming air superiority, and then people start taking pictures of it. So I don't know exactly, I mean, at this point I don't know what's accomplished by holding the status quo, I suppose. That's about all. Peace out.